Right, the tragic consequences of the Biden-Harris administration's border policies were front and center today when the mother of a woman murdered by an illegal immigrant testified before the House Homeland Security Committee. Last August, Rachel Morin, a mother of 5 herself, was found murdered in Maryland. Now, prosecutors allege her suspected killer, who was captured in Oklahoma, entered the country illegally. Joining me now to discuss today's hearing and more is Congressman Josh Brecheen. He serves on the House Homeland Security Committee and the House Budget Committee. He represents the 2nd Congressional District of Oklahoma. Josh, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Thank you, Tony.
How close are you to having votes called on the CR?
I'm not sure about the exact time, but it's going to be this evening.
Okay. All right. I know debate is going on. I didn't want people to know where you were going if you jumped up to run and vote. So let's talk about the hearing today. Any new information? Let's talk about what you heard.
Well, I was engaged in another conversation with Ways and Means, and so I came over late. I did not get a chance to hear her testimony, but very much aware of of the reason she was there. This mother's daughter was not only murdered, but also sexually assaulted by an illegal immigrant. There were warning signs of this individual, and just the lack of vetting that takes place. And then even once some vetting occurs and these people have broken laws or are allowed to remain in this country unless it's major infractions. And I went down one by one, except for one of the witnesses who the Democrats had brought in, who was not going to admit that we are in an unsafe environment. But 2 people from San Diego, along with the mother, they all just readily state what we all know intrinsically, and that is that you are less safe than you were a year ago. You're definitely less safe than you were 2 years ago, and definitely than you were 3 years ago because of this administration's policies. I think many moms and dads that may be watching your program know that you're probably making decisions in terms of whether it's high school or elementary age kiddos, that you're keeping a much closer watch on them when they're going out in public now because of stories like Miss Morin's has experienced personally. It's so tragic.
So Josh, let me ask you this question. We really don't know the number of illegal aliens that are in the country. I mean, the number ranges from 12 million to 18 million. And not all of them are violent criminals, but there are enough to make Americans insecure, feeling insecure, but also their safety being at risk. Let's talk about the discussions. What do we do? What's going to take place? Let's say the border policy is fixed, but you have all those folks here in the country. What do you do?
Tony, we're preparing within our office. I've told my team member they'd actually worked with Heritage on some concepts, and we are trying to lean in on deportation and the characteristics of, number one, how do you pay for that? We've got a country that can't afford the government we've got, and we can't afford to allow these people that have broken our laws to remain here, because it's such a disincentive for this to continue. We all that hold Reagan in such high regard would look back at '86 and say, but that was a mistake because it didn't solve the problem. And so these people have to be removed from this country. It's my belief. That has to send a signal to people that you cannot come into this country, break the law, and expect that you would be first in line. And so deportation is top and center for many of us. And Trump, of course, is talking about it. And we've got to figure out the logistics of that.
I know you're working on the plan, but let me ask you a couple of 30,000-foot questions regarding that, because some of these individuals have been here for a long time. But the law is the law. What do you say to those who say, well, it's not really the Christian thing to do to uproot these people who have been here in this country and deport them?
Well, look, they're trying to mix biblical references about taking care of the foreigner and sojourner. That's an individual mandate. But there's also a mandate that you obey the laws of the land. And we've got people who have broken the laws of the land. And so, there's also the biblical admonition that when there's not, I think it's in Ecclesiastes, it talks about when there's not punishment for wrongdoing, it incites more wrongdoing. And I'm botching that passage of scripture, but that's what happens when there's not consequences. It creates the atmosphere where lawlessness is compounded. And so we've got to make sure that the rule of law is upheld in the United States, or we're asking for law breaking to the nth power to continue.
Let me follow that train of thought for just a moment, because it ties into my next topic. And I want to quote from Proverbs chapter 28, where it says, "For the transgression of a land many are its princes thereof, but by a man of understanding and knowledge the state thereof will be prolonged." That's the King James Version. But you also have been weighing in on yet another attempt to assassinate former President Donald Trump. This speaks to violence, turbulence, an unsettled country. I mean, that lawlessness is manifesting itself at every level.
Yeah. Tony, they're tied. You're pointing to it. They're absolutely tied. We are projecting, when we don't have consequences for infractions, that we're inviting more infractions into a greater level, a greater degree. And lawlessness compounds lawlessness. And so this administration, time and time again, deviating from biblical truths. And where does it end? And you just see so many different characteristics that you could encapsulate in the word of lawlessness. And it's because they don't believe that the plumb line was established generations ago. They think that it's just, mobile, that it's relative to however you feel in the moment of what's right and wrong.
The way out is clear, but not easy.
Look, we've got a true north. It's constitutional in regards to illegal immigration, that we are to protect this nation, Article 4, Section 4, against an invasion. And when you don't feel safe and you have millions that are coming into this country, you can wordsmith it all day long, that is an invasion. And that is, there's an old African proverb that says, if there's no enemy on the inside, the enemy on the outside can do you no harm. Chinese government officials, military positions of influence have been writing for decades about the way that they would take over America. It would be a plan to take it from within.
Yeah, and they're working that plan. Josh Brecheen, always great to see you. Thank you for standing firm on Capitol Hill for truth.
Thanks for your work, Tony, what you stand for.
All right, always great to see you.